Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This week we are discussing Story for Stephen, which is, I think, episode 48 in the run. So
Something like that.
We're doing quite well. We've gotten quite far in. Chris hasn't given up yet. I think we're well past that being a possibility at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think that's we discussed that last week. I think that's fair.
Yeah. So let's see. What do we think, Chris? So, well, actually, no. Let's start as we've been doing recently, which is what do you think it was about? What was the story?
It's a little story for Stephen. Greg has given Stephen the story of how he met Rose.
Mm-hmm.
This time featuring Marty or whatever his name is.
Yes.
Which is an odd framing in a way, like, because Stephen doesn't fucking ask questions, so you'd assume you could have just done it. This was him telling him for the first time, but fine.
No, we had him. We've referenced before that Stephen knows that story and that he tells it a lot because he the second episode, I think, Laser Light Cannon.
Right.
He tells the story of how, I think, but a very, 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 very brief, like one sentence version of how it happened, and Stephen sort of reacts like he's heard it before. So I think their excuse to redo it without it being like, well, Stephen already knows this story, surely. I mean, they could have done the cheesy thing of having Stephen be like, "Tell it again," but I guess this is better because it's at least it's funny when he's like, "Here's the story." Plus my, which is kind of it's like a better framing device than doing the cheesy thing, I suppose.
True.
Anyway, carry on.
The Marty version of the story is that Mr. Universe is doing a gig. He's singing about the stars and shit, almost to the point where, like, at the beginning, I was almost like, is he not from Earth either? Like, it looked like he was in space, but he's not. It's all sort of in his head.
He went through a Ziggy Stardust phase too.
Yeah, because he was actually only performing the song for an audience of one, which is Rose. He gives her a CD. He goes to get her a shirt. Marty appears. Rose has disappeared. He finds her later. He goes to the beach and sees younger versions of gems, which means they have slightly different forms. I did pick up that. They have a little chat. In the end, he decides to go away. He finds Marty. Marty's a bit creepy and weird in the van.
Wait, well, sorry.
That sounds bad.
Clarify, because Marty was a bit weird and creepy in a van makes it sound a lot worse than it is. And if people don't remember this episode, they might be quite surprised.
It was like, that's your problem. You want one big woman instead of all the women. Like, oh, he's not a cool person.
No, he's a bit of a dick. Let's lay that out there. Yeah.
Marty the cock.
Marty's a bit of a cock.
He is driving at least. Then he's like, perhaps you can make me some money. Mr. Universe kicks him out and he follows his heart and he goes and finds Rose and he serenades her and Rose comes out and is like, no, live your life. Get what you want. And he's like, you're what I want. It's a shame because it's such a nice sentiment, but he really like yells it. He's like, you're what I want. It's like, all right, calm down, Greg. Jesus. And then they sort of are all happy, and then it cuts to Stephen and Mr. Universe, and Stephen's like, oh, you loved her, and he's like, come here, and they have a nice little hug. They concur that they were glad he knew Marty, because Marty led him to Beach City, and Beach City led him to Rose, and ultimately Stephen. They stick a photo on the wall, star goes in on the photo. Credits.
Yeah. It's a very good description of the events of the episode,
man.
And I think I agree with you as well on that point of it's a really sweet moment, but it was a slightly odd acting choice. Maybe it said it in the script. He shouts it, and it does feel weirdly in character. To be fair, for Mr. Universe to like not really know how to say it and like just blurt it out like rah.
It was.
But at the same time, it was an odd choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it was passionate, but it was odd. But you know, I thought it was a really good episode. I thought it was a nice little flashback. Quite cool and quirky to see like the gems in other forms and sort of see Amethyst. Kind of Amethyst in particular felt young, which I thought was quite cool. Quite a nice touch.
Yeah.
Quite cool. Few nice little surprises, like he wasn't always from Beach City, like that. I didn't know that. At least.
You don't really assume that he was from elsewhere, but the idea that he travelled through, met Rose, and it changed everything is actually weirdly more sweet and a little bit more powerful than what you would have assumed, which is that he lived in Beach City and met her.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of explains why he's still seemingly living in the van.
Yeah, a little bit, and it's also there's something weirdly heartbreaking about it because Well, it's heartbreaking, but not at all. It's so strange because, in that opening song, he's talking about, as his albums fly off the shelf and people screaming his name and all this stuff that he wants. And as he's singing that, he doesn't get it. He runs a car wash. Like, it all doesn't work out that way for him. But then there's this, like, weirdly hopeful element to the episode, which is that, no, he chose to give up that life for Rose. And it's like, it's bittersweet because it's like, as you're hearing that song at the beginning of the episode, you feel bad for him. But as the episode goes on, they sort of make you go, no, this is what he wanted in the end. He wanted Rose and ultimately, I suppose, Steven. So it's...
You can't buy love, Dan.
Well, precisely. I mean, 100%. You can't buy me love.
That's what this episode is saying. Don't follow your dreams.
Yeah.
Wait for a magical gem to appear.
A big gem lady.
That give you everything you've ever wanted.
Yeah. I think...
we also learned that Rose is barefoot under that dress. That's new. I just thought they oddly, like, I don't know, they just, maybe it's something about the shot, but I just felt like, I realised that I can't make that joke without sounding like a foot guy. I'm not at all. But it just felt like they focused on that, oddly.
Is that what, when he's sort of on the ground and she sort of floats down next to him?
Yeah, I think it was more to show that she was floating. But
I think there was the floating is an interesting thing as well, because obviously all the gems seem to have unique-ish powers. So certain things that they do, and it makes sense that someone who is Rose and she has this whole like flower theme going on, the idea that she would float like a petal on the wind is kind of like, that makes perfect sense. But also as the detail I noticed, and it's not really it's not a thing as such, it's just a cool design choice, but as she comes down, the way her skirt ruffles in the wind makes it look more like rose petals. And I just thought from a design perspective, that was a really cool choice.
I liked as well from a design perspective the idea that they built the more traditional looking house for Steven, and before Steven it was just very gem orientated.
It's just a big cave, a gemmy cave.
Big cave. Yeah.
I'm glad you noticed that, because I debated whether I would point that out, because there's something that comes up later that we'll watch at some point related to the show that clarifies exactly that situation, that they did sort of build that for Steven. But I was wondering if you'd pick up on it here or not. So I'm very glad to hear you did.
Yeah. Were you juggling it to avoid, the Dan, stop spoiling it. By telling him that, you're spoiling that, which we get sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, and I understand their pain, because there are things I've said where even afterwards I've gone, damn, wish I hadn't said that. Like, yeah. So
the chances of me paying that much attention to you.
Slim to none. I know, I agree, but they don't know that, so so I feel bad.
You've referenced episodes, and I've been like, I do not remember that episode.
That's true. Yeah, that is very true. In terms of designs, a cool little few neat continuity things for you, Chris. You'll appreciate this. First of all, you'll notice that Amethyst has much shorter hair in this, and when she looks at Greg's long hair, which is very similar to her present day hair, she goes, "Nice hair." So
nice.
The implication is that
he
chooses. Yeah, he inspires that long hair look that she has in the modern show. I don't know if you picked up on that. I'm guessing not from your reaction.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, and also Pearl's design is one of the designs she flickers through when she got poofed. So when she got stabbed by that robot in Steven the Sword Fighter, and she was receded into her gem and then came out with a slightly different design. When she came back out, obviously, you saw her silhouette go through a few different shapes before it landed on the one. One of them is the shape from this episode.
I did like Pearl saying, on like noticing things, and Pearl saying, "I can sing," sort of showing that jealousy, showing that pay attention to me type thing that we saw a bit of in a recent episode.
In Rose's Scabbard.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Rose's Scabbard.
Yeah.
I got a question, because...
Good observation.
Rose obviously right away kind of has a vibe with Mr. Universe. There's chemistry.
Yeah.
And like I was kind of watching reactions, and the way that when she says that, Garnet and Amethyst giggle. No one was like, you can't be fooling for a human, making me think that they're open to that possibility. Here's my question, Dan.
Yeah.
Do we see a gem? You're probably not going to answer this, but do we see another gem at any point fall in love with a human?
I won't answer that.
Because you could just do that could be one way to keep the show going. You'd wrap up all the Steven stuff, and then another one falls for another human, and you just do it again.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting dynamic because it's like one of those things where it's like, love is the show projects love as this great important thing, and for a gem, it's actually quite dangerous. It's the same way that for the Doctor, it's difficult for him to get attached to a companion because, of course, they're human and have these very short lives, and he lives not eternally, but comparatively eternally. Hundreds of years, and the gems are in a similar situation. We know that they live for hundreds and maybe thousands of years, and that's why when Rose first comes out of her room, she says straight away to Greg, it can't really be a thing, before he is honest about his feelings with her. And I think that is the heartbreaking side of it. It's all very well designed, and that's not even in getting to the part of if you ever want to have kids with this person, they're going to essentially be gone. You'll have the child, but you'll lose the person you love. It's a heartbreaking exchange. So there's so much about gem and human relationships that are a bad idea, and the fact that they happen or have happened even in this one instance we know about, it's so much of that is heartbreaking, interesting. And you're right, there is a big dramatic crutch to the show from all of that. So arguably you could get some more exploration of those ideas by doing a present day equivalent of it. Whether they do or not, I won't reveal, because I think if I was to say yes, you'll be waiting for it, and if I was to say no, you'd be disappointed it's not coming. So no answer I give you is going to make you happy.
Yeah, but if you said no, it could still. They've not given an end date to this show, have they?
So no, it's still going. It's still going. But I'm still not going to give you any sort of. I'm not going to ask that question. There are some questions I'll hint at or whatever. That's what I feel like I would be spoiling to answer.
Yeah, that's fair.
Good thought though. Interesting thoughts.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm that good, Dan.
No, I don't know. I disagree. I think that was a good one. Did you pick up the in-universe explanation I promised you for Steven's t-shirts?
Oh no, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, he has a box of those red shirts with the yellow star in it as his merch.
Yeah.
So the premise is that basically he's had all those shirts, hundreds of them made, never actually became famous, but they were always in his van. So he just, as Steven's gotten older, he's just given him larger and larger sizes.
That's awesome.
So Steven's red shirt with the yellow star that he always wears is because he's got hundreds of them because they're the stock of Mr. Universe shirts merch he was going to sell.
That's awesome.
When I noticed that in this episode, I was just like, that is great. Because I don't know if you remember, Chris, but in a very early episode of this podcast, when I was trying to demonstrate to you the sort of depth and continuity in the show, I said to you, there's an in-universe explanation for Steven's red shirt with the yellow star. I don't know if you recall.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, but not. Yeah, but I didn't. I'm not in the context of that's how detailed the show is, but I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the payoff for that is this episode, because that is the sort of the implication of, if you look in the background, you can see he's got boxes and boxes of these red shirts with the star. And also another continuity thing, of course, is that we see him give Rose the shirt that we know is later found by Steven hanging from a hanger in the tree in the sort of pocket universe inside Lion. So now there's obviously the origin of that is sort of settled with as well.
Oh yeah, I hadn't picked up on that one either.
Yeah, because that is the exact shirt that's hanging from the hanger in the tree.
Yeah.
So again, the show is really, really good at this continuity stuff. Another interesting thing someone pointed out, and I've looked at this online, I didn't really get this for sure, but basically there's a real geography to the town that's been properly worked out, it seems, so you can track certain buildings. And based on what the positioning we know of the Big Donut, it doesn't seem to exist at this point. But Fish Stew Pizza and the Beach City Walk fries do exist. So I guess Big Donut.
That's crazy
was
that someone sat and worked that out. That's nuts.
Yeah. That's cool. So
I love it when you get that.
They've obviously mapped it somehow.
They say that, like, mathematically, this is a real deep reference for Brits. Well, not for Brits, it's not a deep reference, but anyway. They say mathematically the Trotter's flat in Only Fools and Horses just isn't possible. Like, all the dimensions and angles we've seen of it, apparently it's just impossible.
Isn't that also true of Friends, the apartment in Friends?
Not sure. I know someone's done like blueprints of both. Like you can get them online. Like you see articles sometimes like blueprints, floor plans, maybe is a better term. But yeah, possibly like with the technical, because like Rachel, both of their rooms are quite big.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of people complain because theoretically the size and dimensions of the friend's apartment shouldn't be physically possible in New York. Full stop. No apartment in New York is that big. But beyond that, apparently, it just doesn't physically make sense as well.
Yeah, because apparently they just would never be able to afford the rent either. Although they kind of cover that with Monica.
Yes. Yeah. They have that whole rent control thing because she's technically paying it. Yeah. That's right. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but it's all quite. It's one of those brilliant episodes that just like fills in a bunch of little things that we didn't necessarily, you don't need, but for context, it's really nice to have. Does that make sense?
What do you think? And I appreciate maybe the answer to this is partly down to them messing with the continuity, but this is, the second episode in a row really where there's not too much. We haven't had a monster of the week, for example, in a while.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
I think that's the result of their inevitable shifting to a slightly more serialized story for a bit. When it started to happen, I wasn't too worried because I always felt the Monster of the Week stories were always kind of there to set up a bigger story anyway, because they were always related. And obviously we learned in Mirror Gem, Ocean Gem that these Monster of the Week things anyway are related to the bigger story because they are corrupted gems. They used to be gems like the gems we know, and for whatever reason, something you'll find out further down the line, they became corrupted. So like even that is very related to the overall story. So I always assumed that once we started to get into the bigger plot points, we might start to see less of that. But I don't think I was ever worried about it completely going away. So episodes like this, I don't mind because, as I said, it sort of nicely fills in a gap. I mean, I'm guessing from your comment though, or from your question, that you feel in some way you're a little bit.
No, not at all. No.
That kind of episode.
No, not at all. I'm not. I think the fact that we've moved away from that and they don't feel the need to do that every week elevates this. Apart from shows I've previously watched, I appreciate there are other animated shows, other kids shows that no doubt will do that in this current climate. But I, as established before on this podcast, haven't really seen any of them. Yep. So the fact that I'm experiencing with this, I see as nothing but a good thing. It's something, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, I think it's too late now, but I wish that Doctor Who would have the balls to do that sometimes. Like I wish that. And I think Moffat has said that you always need like a monster, but like what if he had an old companion, and the companion was just trying to convince her, the Doctor to make her young. Do you know what? That's a crap example. I can't think of one off the hand now.
Yeah, you're saying that episodes that don't necessarily have a monster, but they have a science fiction conceit that leads to drama of some sort.
Yeah. Like I'm not suggesting just like an episode of like the Doctor like EastEnders, but like I don't think there always needs
the Doctor
to be
just like breaking up with a girl and he can't quite bring up the courage to do it.
Yeah. But take this, you just have an episode that deals with the like Doctor seeing Susan again or something, and there's no science behind it. It's just them sort of travelling. There's no bad guy. I don't know. Yeah. So no, not at all. I don't mind at all the absence of a Monster of the Week.
Yeah, I think they're just smart enough to know that sometimes the show needs room to breathe, and again, not to keep going back to Doctor Who. And I know we've referenced it not just a couple of times this week, but in previous episodes too. But I think there's a weird little parallel actually between these two shows that I haven't really clocked onto until we're doing this rewatch. But there are some parallels. I think that they understand that the show. Sometimes, if you want to do a dramatic thing, will need the room to breathe that you can grant it by dropping that element. Whereas Doctor Who, sometimes we don't always complain. We have complained in the past about certain episodes of Doctor Who having certain elements rushed because they're trying to cram it all into an episode, and they're going, well, we need the dramatic plot, but we also want to throw a monster in because that's what you do because it's Doctor Who. And You're right, having the balls to sometimes go, no. We're going to trust that the characters and the drama of this situation is enough to entertain you for the runtime and duration of this episode. We're not going to insult you by throwing an extra thing in because we think you're not going to enjoy it when we step that back. You know what I mean? And I think it's bravery on the part of the writers, but it is just good writing also because they're making that choice because they know it'll make a better show ultimately, and they're trusting that we'll be on board with that. And in this case, certainly they're right.
For Whovians out there, for me the big example of that is the season 7 episode, The Power of Three. Spends so long on the Amy Rory stuff that it has to wrap up the complicated alien box plot in like a matter of minutes at the very end. Just make it one or the other. And actually, that's actually a really good example of not needing a monster, not needing an alien. Mm-hmm. You could have done a whole episode just about how these 3 people work together now that Amy and Rory are married and sort of want their own space. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah. And for Steven Universe fans that aren't Whovians, I am very sorry.
Yeah, but we've done some episode analysis as well. It's all good. Some classic Steven Universe.
It's all relevant to what we're talking about, Chris.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think to the music in this episode? Because there's 2 pretty clear songs. There's the Destiny song he sings, that went to Rose, the sort of serenading one. But there's also obviously Comet at the beginning, which is the big opening number, has the really cool sort of like 80s-fied rock star video, which I really love because they've paid the animation is actually staggeringly good there. The way they like do the fades and I don't know, all the shots in that are just glorious to look at. And instantly it's sort of more in his mind likely than it is actually a real anything, but it's still brilliant.
But they just keep it going for so long that I began to question it. I think they're really good. I assume Greg's instrument is the electric guitar or the guitar. Mm-hmm. I really like the first one, and I like the second one. I like the Destiny stuff. I thought they were good, sweet little numbers. I, at one point, almost worried. Again, this is just a reflection of how long I think they kept that opening song going. I was wondering if it was a musical episode and the whole story would be told as a song. I'm glad, given the content, that they didn't go down that route. But yeah, I thought it was. I thought the songs were great.
Worried is an interesting thought. So you wouldn't have. So you'd have felt like, just out of sheer curiosity. So you would have not been on board with a musical episode then in this particular example.
I wouldn't. I suppose worried was the wrong term to use because I wouldn't have been on board with a musical episode that dealt with this content. But if it's the right kind of content, then
you can get away with it. So you're saying this particular story you didn't feel merited musical episode. This particular story.
No.
Gotcha. Interesting. Cool. Is that everything? We done? I think we're done, Chris.
I feel like I'm done. Yeah.
Chris, like, Dan, shut the fuck up. Let's end this thing. I'm done.
No. I just mean like, yeah, I'm done.
Cool. All right. Well,
if you're done too.
I'm happy to wrap it up there. So thanks for everyone for listening as always, and for the comments and all the general getting involvedness that's happening.
All that jazz.
We're starting to barrel towards the sort of season 1 finale. So we're a couple episodes out of that from that now. So that's coming. I know you guys are excited about it. People have been excited about that since day 1. So yeah, it's going to be interesting as we get through the next few. So that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week as we discuss The Message.